What's up, Pokemon trainers? You got Pokemon Master TC, and I hope you brought your box of tissues because again, I am doing another emotional and sad video. My last couple of videos was top 10 saddest moments from the Pokemon anime in season 1, and then why Butterfree's goodbye still hurts 25 years later. Well, today I'm going to be doing the top 10 saddest Pokemon entries in the Pokedex for Red, Blue, and Yellow. But if you are a first-time viewer, or if you just haven't yet, make sure you hit that sub button because I've got tons of Pokemon content from rankings, discussions, and showcases of my childhood collection. All right, get those tissues out because we are jumping into the saddest Pokedex entries for Red, Blue, and Yellow. Pokemon changed my life. It became my first addiction. The TV show, games, cards, and toys. I was enamored by it all. Becoming a Pokemon Master was all that I cared about as a kid. And so, I became one. Join me, Pokemon Master TC, as I relive the most nostalgic part of my childhood and showcase my Pokemon collection, and most important of all, share my love of Pokemon with you. All right, trainers, now I have written these down word for word, what they say in the Pokedex entry, and I'll read them, and then I'm gonna share some thoughts onto why I think they are so sad. So let's kick this off with Raticate's Pokedex entry from Red and Blue. It says, it uses its whiskers to maintain its balance. It apparently slows down if they are cut off. So when I think of Pokemon, I think of them being around humans, and unfortunately that probably means that humans abuse Pokemon in various ways. There are a lot of terrible people out there, and so I just picture people cutting Raticate's whiskers off, and to understand that knowledge, something has had to happen. And so I feel like a lot of research gets done on rats in general, and so in the Pokemon world, probably a lot of research was done on Raticate, and his whiskers were probably cut off a lot, and it's just sad to think about. Now these Pokedex entries are not in any particular order, so I'm going to be jumping around, and let's go ahead and get Mewtwo out of the way. I'm sure everyone thought this would be on the list, but coming from Red and Blue, the Pokedex entry for Mewtwo says it was created by a scientist after years of horrific gene splicing and DNA engineering experiments. So I picture all of the freaks and the genetic bio waste that has happened, all of the failed experiments of trying to clone Mew, and it makes me wonder if there are Pokemon bodies that are just stacked up in some laboratory and they're just dead because they didn't live. And Mewtwo was a huge success because they were able to successfully clone Mew, but as the Pokedex entry suggests, there was a lot of horrific failures, and I think of all of those Pokemon that didn't make it. I don't know, it kind of gives me a creepy feeling. Speaking of creepy, let's head to Parasect from the Red and Blue Pokedex entry. It says, a host-parasite pair in which the parasite mushroom has taken over the host bug, prefers damp places. So I never actually understood the design of Parasect when I was a kid, but if you look at it now, you see its eyes are gone, or its eyeballs. They're glazed over like a zombie, and this explains it. So the Pokemon is actually killed, and the mushrooms kind of control its body movements. It's really weird to think of a zombie Pokemon, and I know that there is an animal that is, or not an animal, there is a mushroom that's similar to this in the real world, and so it's just really creepy to think about, and honestly, it's sad that a Pokemon has to die and is now controlled by mushrooms. If you thought I was done with legendary Pokemon Pokedex entries, you are wrong. Let's go to Articuno from the red and blue entry. It says, a legendary bird that is said to appear to doomed people who are lost in the icy mountains. And so when I think of that, I think of people who are on their deathbed on the mountain. They are about to die, and then the last thing they see is Articuno. I don't know, you could probably go two different ways with this. You could think that maybe Articuno saves them, but the entry says doomed people. So it makes me think that their fate is sealed and they are forever doomed on this mountain, destined to die. So Articuno is kind of the Grim Reaper for people on this mountain. It's sad, and I'm sure Articuno doesn't like to see all these dead people or people that are dying, but that's what it says in the Pokedex entry. This next Pokemon was used for comedy in the anime, but it gets a little bit dark. Psyduck from the yellow entry says, always tormented by headaches. It uses its psychic powers, but it is not known if it intends to do so. So to be tormented by headaches, it's something that I can kind of relate to. A couple years ago, for about 2 years, I suffered terrible headaches, and they were bad enough to make me go home from work, and I just couldn't do anything all day. I would just lay in bed with the lights out, and it was just torture. So to hear that a Pokemon is constantly dealing with these headaches that are so intense that it actually gives it psychic powers. I mean, it would be cool to have psychic powers, but I wouldn't want them if it meant that I'd be tortured every moment with a headache. So Psyduck's entry to me is just sad. How about we go to a prehistoric Pokemon? That's gonna be Omastar from red and blue. It says a prehistoric Pokemon that died out when its heavy shell made it impossible to catch prey. So you mean to tell me that this shell on the back of the Pokemon was so heavy that it literally couldn't move and it starved to death and the entire species died because of this? That sounds terrible. It's so sad to think about a helpless Pokemon that can't eat any food, it can't get any nutrients because the shell is just so heavy, it is crushing its body and it can't move. That is a sad entry in the Pokedex. If you clicked this video, you knew this entry was gonna be on there because everyone knows about Cubone and how horrific its history is. But if you don't, let me read it to you. This is from Yellow. It says, it wears the skull of its deceased mother. It cries echo inside the skull and come out as a sad melody. This is by far the worst Pokedex entry of Generation 1. It is so depressing to think about. You have a tiny baby Pokemon, and its mom eventually dies, or it dies at birth, and it wears the skull of its mom. So can you imagine a Pokemon, a little baby Pokemon, ripping the head off, or just taking the skull from the decaying body and putting it on its head? That's Cubone. That is literally what Cubone is doing, and that is so terrible and sad to think about. And honestly, I kind of like that it adds a little horror element to Pokemon in the first generation. But Cubone, everyone can agree, that's probably the saddest entry. Pokemon are all about evolution, but they don't always get stronger. In fact, some of them get weaker, and that's the case with Magikarp. Magikarp from the red and blue entry, it says, in the distant past, it was somewhat stronger than the horribly weak descendants that exist today. So to me, you know, I know what Magikarp is in the anime. He's a joke, and in the game, it's really pathetic. But obviously, if you train it, you get a Gyarados, so it's potentially worth it. But just to see and hear how pathetic this Pokemon's existence is, it just doesn't make me feel very good because I just see Magikarp flopping around, not doing anything, easy prey for Pokemon, but then again, you can't eat it, so it's practically worthless. Magikarp, it's a sad Pokemon, and it has a sad entry. We got 2 entries left. Let's keep it with water Pokemon and Staryu from the yellow entry. It's gonna say, as long as the center section is unharmed, it can grow back fully, even if it is chopped to bits. Now, I know people love their seafood, and when I read the phrase chopped to bits, it makes me think that Staryu are harvested for their meat in restaurants. I don't know why, it's just something that I thought about. And that's just terrible. You could have a Staryu harvest farm at a seafood restaurant where you're just chopping the limbs off, wait a week, the limbs come back, you chop the limbs off again, you're feeding people left and right. I don't know if that's actually the case, probably not, but my imagination runs wild when I read stuff like that, and so potentially Staryu has a terrible existence if it got into the human population, especially those that love seafood. And finally, one of the happiest Pokemon has a potentially sad entry. That's gonna be Chansey from Pokemon Yellow. It says, a gentle and kind-hearted Pokemon that shares its nutritious eggs if it sees an injured Pokemon. So let me get this straight. Let me ask you guys something. Where do Pokemon come from? They come from eggs. What is Chansey always carrying in its belly? Its egg, or the egg of its child. And so you are telling me that Chansey is literally feeding its child to injured Pokemon. That is so sadistic and twisted and weird and sad. And it really makes me think that Chansey is this murderous mother that just can't stop feeding its children to injured Pokemon. It's a weird thought. To me, I think it's sad, but there was just a lot of weird Pokedex entries to go through on this list, and I feel like I picked out 10 of the best ones that were potentially sad. So if I missed any, let me know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to drop me a comment on what you thought was the saddest Pokedex entry in red, blue, or yellow. And of course, hit that sub button because I've got tons of Pokemon content on my channel, including the reason why Butterfree's goodbye still hurts 25 years later. That's a great video I just did. Make sure you watch that after this. But trainers, I wish you the best in catching them all.